One of the biggest surprises from last season was unquestionably the Memphis Grizzlies. They burst onto the scene the prior season when they eliminated Steph and the Warriors in the play-in. So people thought that they would likely be taking a step forward as a young team, but no one anticipated they would be in the mix for the top seed out west, especially when you factor in all the injuries that they had to deal with. It just never seemed to matter who was in the lineup. They were just winning games. And despite being such a young team, they are as physically and mentally tough as any team in the league. I really feel like people in the media and on social media are kind of sleeping on them this season because of some perceived playoff struggles. They had a really tough series in the first round with the Timberwolves, but matchup wise, that was as bad of a matchup as you could find for them. Another frenetic paced young team with tons of swag and nothing to lose. So some experts looked at that and saw a 2 seed struggle with a 7 seed and have sort of written them off. But per usual with the talking heads at ESPN, there's just a lot of missing context and nuance with that series. After that, they were knocked off by the eventual champion Warriors, and that was that. I just really quickly as an aside, I am super pumped to see how this rivalry develops over time. The Grizzlies and the Warriors just really don't like one another, so look out for that this year. But where did things go wrong for them? Why weren't they able to get past the Warriors? I know it's cliche, but honestly, youth. Ja is still learning to play around double teams out of the pick and roll. Jaren Jackson is still struggling with consistency and staying out of foul trouble. Just the classic things that young players can struggle with. It's nothing to be overly concerned with about the future of this team. Outside of that, Desmond Bane was banged up the whole series. And then at the end, Ja Morant gets hurt. So maybe with another year of experience and some better injury luck, things will go better for them in those tough playoff battles going forward. Obviously, the injury to Jaren Jackson Jr. this season is not a great start to those hopes. And that has to be a pretty big concern moving forward. He's already missed a ton of time due to injuries throughout his relatively young NBA career. And just anytime I see foot injuries on big guys, I just cringe. They say he's going to make a full recovery, but those foot injuries on big guys, potentially career altering slash ending type stuff if that persists. But if this just ends up being a bump in the road like they're anticipating for Triple J, then the future is really bright in Memphis for both this season and beyond. This year, the Grizzlies over under is 48 and a half. And for me, that's a resounding over. They won 56 games last year. And yes, they lose DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson to trade and free agency. And yes, they're going to be missing Triple J to start the year. But last year they dealt with significant injuries and bouts of COVID, and they just kept on winning. The front office has put together a talented enough team, and Taylor Jenkins is a good enough coach that even with someone as important as Triple J missing significant time, they're going to find ways to win games. They were able to bring in Danny Green for some veteran help, and rookie wise, they get Jake LaRavia, David Roddy from the draft, and then add Kenny Lofton Jr., who looked really good in Summer League. Maybe some of those rookies can contribute right out of the box. But the biggest, quote, additions for them are just going to be made on the developmental side. Ja Morant was voted as the most improved player last season, and I think he's likely going to be in the MVP conversation this year. I expect Desmond Bane is going to continue to develop and a lot of those other young guys. But for me, the guy to look out for is going to be Zaire Williams. He looked really good in spotty playing time last season. And now with slow mo gone, he's going to have room to really spread his wings and flourish. Another thing to kind of factor in with taking the Memphis over is their potential for a big trade. Memphis has tons of draft picks and young assets that when you combine that with Steven Adams expiring contract and Dylan Brooks expiring contract, you can get a star player. I was really surprised they didn't throw their hat into the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes, but don't be surprised if you start hearing some Memphis trade buzz when those Durant rumors start ramping up back up again, or when we hear about the next disgruntled star player. I would expect Memphis to be in the mix for those types of players. But even if they don't turn that into an all NBA caliber player, like the Steven Adams contract and some of those draft picks, I strongly believe that the Memphis team that we're seeing start the year will not be the same as the one ending the year. They have too much flexibility. and the window is wide open for them. They have an owner who's willing to spend money, so I expect them to be making like a pretty significant move by a trade this year. So it's an easy over for me. And while I don't know that this is going to be the year that they make a finals appearance, I wouldn't totally rule it out with this group. At the very least, they're going to be looking at home court in the first round this season.